Hi. Watch this video to know the features of invoicing in Telagus. Log in to Telagus and go to Invoices under Finance option from left menu bar. A list of already created invoices will be displayed on the screen. Click on Add Invoice button from the top right of the screen to generate a new invoice in Telagus. In the pop-up menu, choose a client from the list for whom the invoice needs to be created. You can scroll the list or type a few characters to find the client. After selecting a client, enter the date of the invoice, and enter the due date for the same. Next, select a tax from the list. These are the taxes saved in the settings of Telagus. If a new tax needs to be applied on the invoice, click on Add New Tax button to add a new tax into Telagus settings. Enter the title and percentage of the tax amount and click on Add Tax button to add a new tax. You can also select a second tax if applicable. Please note that taxes are optional, and if it is not applied to your invoice, leave it blank. Next would be Invoice Reference Number field, where you can define the reference number for the invoice. Example, you want to mention Test 001 in the invoice number, type Test 001 in the reference field. Or leave it blank to automatically get a system-generated invoice number. Next, enter the notes for your invoice. This will be displayed on your invoice at the bottom of the invoice. Scroll down and select a status for the invoice. Default status would be draft. However, you can change it to non-paid or paid at the time of generation of the invoice, or you can change the status anytime after generation too. Next is partial payment amount. You can enter the amount which is partially paid against this invoice. Example, if the full invoice amount is £1,000 and client has already paid £200 for this invoice, you can enter £200 in the partial payment amount and Telagus will create an invoice according to the entries. Once the details are entered, click on Add button to add the invoice. Once it is added, the invoice layout will start displaying on the screen. Left portion will display the status of the invoice. Our invoice is currently in draft status, hence the same is displayed on the top of the screen. Then, the logo of your company which is uploaded into your Telagus profile will be displayed below the status. Right portion will display the invoice number, bill date, and due date, which were set on the previous page. Invoice from details will be your details as per Telagus profile details, and client details will be displayed under bill to section. Below would be the invoice item section where you can add the items according to your requirements. Currently there are no items added to the invoice, hence the items section is displayed empty. And at the extreme bottom of the invoice, notes will be displayed. Let's add an item to the invoice. Click on Add Item button from the top right of the invoice screen to add a new item. Start entering the name of the item in the item input box. If the item is already created earlier, it will start appearing in the list of items. Otherwise, you can type the item name and click on Add button to add the item in the list. This can be used in all the further invoices whenever required. Then, enter the description for the item. You can always use the format options to make your invoice more highlighted with different kind of texts. If the item has a unit, enter the unit type in the next box, if not, leave it blank. Enter the quantity in the quantity box. This will be auto-calculated based on the rate of the item. And at the last, enter the rate of the item. You will need to enter the rate of single unit here. Telagus will automatically calculate the amount from rate and quantity. Once the details are filled, click on Save button to add the item to the invoice. As you can see, the item will start displaying on the invoice page and total amount will automatically be calculated. Also, the taxes and partial payment will get auto-adjusted with the amount. You can always edit or delete the item by clicking on Edit or Delete button from the Items section. Once the invoice is prepared, click on Actions button from the top of the screen. First option is to email the invoice to the client. Click on Send Invoice to the client and a new pop-up will be displayed. Client's default email address will automatically be displayed inside to box. You can enter other email details like CC, BCC, and subject of the email. Then click on Send button to send the invoice to the client. Once it is sent, the client will receive an email with invoice in PDF file format. And once the page is refreshed, the email sent date will start displayed on the screen and the status of the invoice will get changed to not paid. Go back from the invoice screen to view the invoice details in the list. You can choose clone, view, edit or delete options from the list. Once the invoice is paid, click on Edit button and change the status to paid and update the details. This will change the status of the invoice to paid. To make the clone of the invoice, meaning if an invoice is created and listed, and if you want the same content of the invoice or you want to change a little content of the invoice, click on Clone Invoice button and exactly same invoice will be duplicated with a new invoice number. You can then edit the invoice to make necessary changes in the clone invoice and use it separately. You can download the invoice PDF anytime by clicking on View, then go to Actions and select Download PDF option. To view the invoice reports, click on View Reports from the List View page. You can filter the records in the report based on clients and duration of the invoices. That's all about invoicing in Telagus. Watch other tutorials of Telagus to learn more about exciting features of Telagus. Thank you.